We are live. Um, and Kaylee, do we know if we have people with us? Excellent. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the second annual Shambhala Mountain Center Director online gathering. So I hope you have a nice cup of tea with you and you're ready for an hour of discussion. I'd like to thank Acharya Hesse and Robert Reichner for joining us. Robert's going to be asking questions in regard to SMC's business and finances, and Charlie Hesse will be asking questions in regard to community and community development and staff path and such. I'd like to very much encourage people to write in questions. I believe if you scroll down, you will be able to see a place where you can write questions in. And there'll be a period at the end of this broadcast for about 20 minutes where all we'll be doing is answering questions that people send in. So very much look forward to that. So I'll just start out with a couple of words and then invite Charya Hesse to grill me on the state of SMC and our plans. SMC has gone through just an amazing period of time. We've developed a team there that is doing what I consider and what a lot of people consider to be really groundbreaking work for Shambhala Mountain Center and for Shambhala as a whole. And some of those things will be discussed during the call tonight. If I had to articulate the single most important thing for me, it's a sense of team and a sense of community that's developed there. We have, in our leadership at Shambhala Mountain Center, everyone who sits at the executive table has worked their way up, has had experience there. Quite a lot of young people have come to Shambhala Mountain Center and found a home where they have a sense of meaning and purpose, where they connect with the Shambhala path and find work that's actually fulfilling for them, where they can not only bring their passion to the work, but also connect with a sense of vision that Shambhala is uniquely able to provide. So I'm incredibly grateful for this team of people. I would say probably as grateful as I am to the wonderful supporters out there at Shambhala Mountain Center. So this is kind of a shout out to both the staff at SMC and to our supporters. So I think with that, maybe we can launch into the discussion with Acharya Hesse. Again, please do send in your questions. We'll have a good chunk of time at the end of this broadcast to address any questions.
So thank you very much, Michael. And you know, it's been an interesting experience for me over the last several months because I had been coming up to Shambhala Mountain Center to teach on a regular basis, but now I'm working with Shambhala Mountain Center, doing special projects and stuff. So I came up and I came into the staff situation, and I was very curious to see what I would find because I've been coming to Shambhala Mountain Center now for 40 years or so, and there have been a lot of different sort of tones to what it means to be on staff there. Sometimes people feel beaten down or in retreat mode or isolated. But what I found, quite frankly, was a tremendous amount of creativity and a tremendous amount of diversity. And that was really encouraging. A really diverse group of people who are really engaged and fun to work with. That was exciting for me. And especially given the challenges that Shambhala Mountain Center has faced over the last many years, including having to move everybody out because of a fire and various financial issues and, you know, programs that were challenging to do. And now all kinds of initiatives that are new territory, especially the stuff that's been happening with online programs. You know, you're curious, do people feel engaged or not? So my experience was that people definitely are engaged, and there's a tremendous spectrum of engagement from older students and newer students, but everyone's doing new things. So I'm curious to ask you, Michael, how is it that that quality of creativity and engagement started to happen? I mean, was it abrupt or was it a gradual process?
I would say that it was a fairly gradual process. I think if I had to lay out the specific elements that came into it, one was a sense of communication, that learning what trust meant and
Mm-hmm.
learning how to engage with quite a diverse population. That's been a significant piece, and it's still a thing that's, I think, accurately, the accurate way to put it is it will always be the case. We have new people who arrive at different levels at SMC, and they need to tune in. And then they need to go through their process. And they're not only tuning into an intentional community where the meaning is in the community, it's in the path of service, it's in the work, it's in the experience on the land. They're tuning into all of these things, and they're tuning into their spiritual path.
Yeah.
And that's a profound and very complex mix with a lot of different touch points. People are drawn to spiritual paths for a range of reasons. Some because they've experienced immense challenges in their life. Some because coming out of various wholesome activities, they connect with another wholesome activity. Some because of deep wounding. There's many ways to get involved with it. So having all of that come in and be welcomed at SMC, and then to bring it all into the way that we communicate with each other, the way that we live with each other, the way we establish boundaries and support each other, the development of a culture of no mistake, that's very foreign for a lot of people. So having everything held at SMC from the perspective of a Shambhala intentional community and being able to explore what that means to support the development of a community, I think that's been a huge piece. And there's a lot of people who are involved in that. We have an entire community council that's devoted to the development of the community. Those are the two councils at SMC that really kind of manage the place. There's an executive council on the operations side, and then there's a community council. So we very much valued both of them and recognize that one without the other is like a bird with one wing. It just won't fly.
That's great.
Yeah. So maybe that's enough for just for now. If you have other questions about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me that when I go up there, you have a constant, lot of strata from people who've been part of the Sangha for 40 years, and they have to experience Shambhala Mountain Center as something new because it's not how things were back in the day. And then you have people who are brand new who are trying to figure out what Shambhala is, and then everybody in the middle. And so it's a really active process to create a community. It's not like, oh, we have this thing. I was just at Karma Chuling for a month reading a dacha, and it has this quality of Karma Chuling knows what it is. It does what it does really, really well, and it processes people really, really well. And you come back to Shambhala Mountain Center, and it's like it's a much bigger space that community is happening in. And I was fascinated to see how much vibrancy there was in that big space. And yet you've had some real challenges this year, haven't you? You had a staff person who passed away that was big impact on the community and required everyone to pull together that way.
Yeah, that and Acharya Lyon, her passing. She was recently cremated up here. I think one of the things that allows a community to survive this kind of thing is really leaning into it, really actually addressing it and talking about it right away, and then bringing in the support that's needed for these things. In particular with the death, we brought a lot of support of the death of the staff person earlier. We brought a lot of support onto the land, but
that really pointed up to me that you had a system that was ready to relate, and the level I was part of that whole situation from the outside, but I saw, everybody knew how to circle around and support each other, and there was tremendous commitment to the staff. That was really moving and powerful to see that, and it wasn't an easy thing to go through for anybody, but you realized a lot of work had to have gone in to to creating the community council and having
Mm-hmm.
people understand what community meant to be able to ride out something as painful as that
Mm-hmm.
with that kind of commitment and care.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd like to bring up, because it is really something new and I think it's really important, is when I was director of Shambhala Mountain Center back in the 80s, some people had an old Russian slogan of, you pretend to pay us and we pretend to work. And you really changed that, and it was a big, somewhat brave move in terms of how you're working with employment and payment for staff people at
Mm-hmm.
Shambhala Mountain Center. And I'm actually really proud of that, even though I didn't do it, but I'd like you to share that.
Certainly. There certainly was a feeling that you come to SMC and you're going to work really hard, and there's something fantastic about that. It had gotten to the place where it was a little bit grueling, and people really had to stretch beyond in some cases a reasonable amount. We felt that there were a few factors coming together. One was that we were becoming a larger presence in Colorado and in the world, and there's more attention being paid to us. And also, we went through some examination of what kind of a community are we? What is an intentional Shambhala community? And one of the things that we felt was that paying people for the work they do on an hourly basis, it is in keeping with the Fair Labor Standard Act. It allows us a very powerful financial metric on how much we're asking for people, and a very immediate monthly feedback in the payroll line. You know, you can't avoid the truth of, you know, the dollars you have to spend on payroll. So it allowed us to focus the efforts of the staff and to really be clear on when we're asking people to go beyond, we're going to pay overtime for that. You know, there's something about the lineage of activists in the world, particularly in the developed world, who put in an enormous amount of work and sacrificed life and limb in some cases to earn for people a good standard of living. And for me and for our leadership at SMC, we felt that it was appropriate to honor that lineage and give people a standard of living that they could actually survive. You know, they could have a dinner out sometimes. They could buy clothes that were suitable for 8,000 feet up and a mile into the mountains. And so that movement to an hourly wage and to paying overtime, that was a really important step for us. I think it's really helped SMC as a community to function better and to have a more a clearer understanding of what we ask people to do.
That's really exciting. I spent an hour or two with Molly Stetson today working on envisioning going forward with staff culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Molly's main job up there, and it was really fun working with her. But I'd be curious if you had to say something about your vision or aspiration for staff culture at Shambhala Mountain Center going forward. What would you pick as the thing that is sort of at the heart of it for you?
Yeah, it's interesting to try to say if there's one thing at the heart of it. The obvious answer, and I think the true answer, is that the teachings of Shambhala allow you to understand how to build a community. That if we really pay attention to the new household text and all the various other teachings that we have about community, about Lungta, about relating to Drala, that those provide us with some important reference points on how to move forward. There's aspects of simply what's a wholesome life, what's a balanced life. You know, there's a spiritual practice at the center of it. There's meaningful work that's of service to the world. There's something physical for the body. There's something artistic, could be reading or dance or music or whatever. And then social time, good social engagement. There can be other components, but when you've got something like that mix, you've got a strong sense of balance. Now at SMC, the energy can really disperse people. You know, after dinner, historically at SMC, it's been hard to bring people together. So finding ways to draw out the interests of the staff, and that's an ever-changing thing. You know, different groups of people get together at SMC, and they may be more interested in music at this point or something else. What we're wanting to do is develop ways to tune into the kind of degree of activity that SMC staff want to engage in, and support those activities, and have it all kind of resting on this understanding of how Shambhala illuminates all those things. There's elements of professional development, of personal development, of spiritual development that we think are really, really central to having a thriving community there, and that thriving community is then the heartbeat for the body which the business and financial activities manifest.
That's great, and I actually want to thank you personally, because coming up and being part of the Shambhala Mountain Center community has been a great joy for me.
It's been fun for us having you, Dan.
And I think you know, as Shambhala Mountain Center becomes more and more public, how the community is going to be an important part of what people take away. It already is, but I mean, as more and more public programs come in various forms, people are going to be inspired not just by the stupa, but by the community and the people they meet, and I think we're ready for that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome. I have a note here.
Yes.
Please do write questions lower on the page. Even if you watch after it's live, we'll get back to you. Oh, so even if you write questions and we don't get to answer them during the broadcast, we will reply to any question that's put up this evening on the broadcast. So I think at this point we should probably start to segue over to the business and financial side. Dan, is there any final question or observation that you want to make, or shall we just move on?
Well, I think I'd just like to reiterate that, you know, my sort of heart is telling me this is a really creative time for Shambhala Mountain Center, and in so many different ways, and I do feel like the community is one of those ways. So, you know, it's great when it's springtime in any organization. That's a good thing.
Yeah. It's like we're driving. The metaphor I've been playing with recently is you're driving towards the ocean and you can start to smell the salt.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Well, thank you, Acharya Hesse, and don't go away.
I'll be here.
Excellent. And, Robert, please.
Good. Well, thank you for including me in this. And as you mentioned, we were going to talk about the business and financial pieces. And I'll just start by saying how much I've appreciated you and your role in the last few years, and the ways in which you really welcome transparency, openness, and directness. So in the spirit of that, I'll be asking a range of questions, because I think it's what's making the community successful right now, and what's opening these possibilities for Shambhala Mountain Center. I think the first one is, my sense in talking to people, both at SMC, but actually all over the mandala, is that this is a time of flourishing for Shambhala Mountain Center. That things are actually going better. And just to name it, this is in contrast to feelings of maybe even doom and gloom in the past. And so I wanted to ask if that's your feeling, and then, if so, what's driving that from your perspective?
I don't know how to not feel optimistic about it. My approach to this is, I was given a job by the Sakyong, and I'm going to do it. And so on some level, I don't feel I'm a good reference point of, do I feel optimistic about SMC, because that's the air I breathe, is optimism about SMC. That said, I do feel that I have some rigor in terms of my understanding of the situation. And if you look at various metrics, we've talked a little bit about community already, and I'm sure there'll be more questions later on about that as well. If you look at the financial metrics, in those reports that we sent out, the comparisons of 2012, 13, and 14, and then the year-to-date 14-15 comparisons, the numbers somewhat speak for themselves, with the understanding that we're not quite at the end of this year, and the tail end of this year is going to be a little stronger than last year. I think what's driving this is a mixture of things. One is that there's a complete openness to creativity. You know, if somebody comes to me and they present an idea that looks like it's got some traction or that is interesting, our response is a yes. You know, just that fundamental kind of improv theater approach of yes and or yes but, you know, of going for it, some kind of excitement about it. And then out of that, the ka of the situation, the actual truth of it, will arise. So we're really wanting to be innovative. We really want to be seen as a place where we're an incubator for new and exciting ways of expanding on Shambhala, of, you know, spreading the vision of Shambhala, being a benefit to the world. And that has had real financial success. You know, with our online work, we've made a significant amount of money over the last 13 months. There's proof of concept out of the last one. With our 2 new online conferences, those were brand new kinds of land center events, having a mixture of Shambhala teachers and teachers from other traditions and secular teachers coming together to talk about specific issues. This was a new and exciting kind of program. So for me, I think this openness to ideas, the kind of seriousness and discipline that comes from things such as opening ourselves to hourly pay for the staff, to being Fair Labor Standard Act compliant, and a sense of how the whole thing is holistic. Those are some of the key components. Beyond that, I would say staff retention has been huge, particularly in leadership. We have people who've stayed on and others who've come back and bring an enormous amount of experience to the ways of what can be a pretty complicated place to navigate at SMC.
Mm-hmm. It's a really interesting way of tying together the community aspect and then showing how that can have these beneficial effects on the, you know, more bottom line perspective, and that those are actually in harmony. Please go ahead if you want to speak to that.
It's something about Shambhala and how we embrace the world, that we're wanting to pay attention to everything. We're wanting to be ultimately vulnerable so that we can learn, so that we take in the world and then are able to benefit from that and in turn benefit the world as a result. So our capacity to learn from the kind of things that are coming up, the kind of challenges that we experience, whether it's the fire or the pine beetles or financial challenges, and how we actually build to a place where we're a thriving financial institution, that for me is ultimately in keeping with my path as a Shambhala leader.
Yeah. So, one of the things where we are seeing some of that success, I think, is in the program revenue, which has increased maybe $350,000 over the last couple of years in terms of the net, and then also these additional revenue streams which are attached to new business models. Can you say something about that?
Sure. The heart of our new business model at SMC is really pretty simple. We recognize that bringing people to the land wouldn't provide sufficient revenue for SMC, that there's too many challenges, and I'll just iterate a few of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one was in the old days, we had 3-month seminary. So that was a guaranteed sellout of the land. Absolutely locked in profit on an annual basis. We don't have that now. We have a pastiche of various programs that are also shared among all 4 of the land centers. And then we have to fill in the blanks on the schedule with all kinds of different kinds of programs. So there's a fair bit of infrastructure at SMC that needs to be kept up, and we need to have programs to put in there to float the boat. It's hard to get a seamless stream of revenue even in the summer because you need time between the various programs in order to set up and make changes. And you may have a program in Red Feather and downtown in the main shrine tent. So that's complicated. And then in the off season, it's very difficult to have programs during the week. There's the weather, there's the distance. The competition is more significant than it used to be, in that if a teacher simply rents a hall in a city and puts out a shingle, they're going to make more money than they would if they came to SMC, and in some cases they might reach more people. So there's, you know, a question of how much benefit they can be. So there needs to be a significant value added SMC. So those are just some examples of some of the kinds of challenges for having SMC be based on just bringing people to the land. So what we decided was we needed a new revenue stream, and so that's the online. And we've had 3 conferences, and they've worked. They've been very successful. Our last one that finished a few weeks ago, I believe our gross profits will be somewhere around $100,000. So that's pretty much proof of concept on that. With the large on-land conferences with multiple presenters that I mentioned earlier, we had Wisdom in Action and Wisdom Rising. With those are multi-day, so longer than a weekend, and large programs, so multiple hundreds of people is our target. Bringing those in and cutting the kind of lowest 15% of our programs, the really small ones that don't always run, that may only have 5 to 15 people, but provide a significant workload for the staff. If we can cut those, replace them with those larger programs, so there's less work, we can do a better quality job, and then supplement that with the online revenues, which is a growth market. That's how we feel we're going to make SMC something that is not only sort of sustainable, but actually thrives.
Yeah. Which is also then very strongly in line with the mission, with everything we're looking to do within Shambhala. Can
I bring up one thing that I think is important in terms of the financial challenges and achievement that Shambhala Mountain Center has been going through, and the transition we're in now, is that quite a number of years ago, the health department told us that we had to put in a completely new potable water and sewage treatment system, and SMC has actually invested $1.4 million in that. And that's an unbelievable burden that we have achieved, and it wasn't just SMC that achieved it. It was a lot of really generous people who cared about SMC who achieved it, and we have one more leg to go in that process. But it's amazing that we've been able to take a mountain site and actually fully make it possible to develop under the health laws and everything else. So there are a lot of challenges that came along with the place, and we're coming to the other side of those now. We have one more piece to go. But I just want to acknowledge that, that's part of what's happened here.
That's great, Acharya. Yeah, and that has been a tremendous success. It actually leads into another question I had, which is, what are those remaining challenges? Kind of what's on the horizon. I know that we're seeing a lot of successes along the way, and I know that there are probably still some things that you're seeing we're going to need to work on. So what are those, and what are maybe some big ticket items that are coming up as you look towards the future?
Sure. I think the biggest challenge at this point is kind of the biggest opportunity. That we've gone a distance with the bank that we've been with for a number of years, and that relationship, it isn't a great relationship right now. And we want a friendly exit with them, and they want a friendly exit with us. We're in discussions with another bank that understands us, that appreciates the entrepreneurial and innovative approach, that actually understands something about our community development and the importance of the integration of community and work, and how that's based on a spiritual path for us. So we're very excited about that. If we can finish this year in a strong way, and our projections are indicating that we'll finish well, that'll give us 2 years of good profit and loss statements and balance sheet, and then the bank has said that that's when they'll be able to talk turkey with us. So entering into a new relationship with this new bank will be very, very helpful. Next year, we're hoping that based on this relationship with the bank, we won't be quite as subject to the vicissitudes of our seasonal business income. and we'll actually be able to take a significant leap forward in our online programming. That we won't have to rush a program in the spring necessarily. We can do some community building around that online, and we can have a significant program in the fall. So those are some of the things for next year: stabilizing, developing the new bank relationship, taking our online program to the next level, and then having stability among some of the other kinds of programs that we have. And I'll just answer one question that came up already, which was, with our new business model, will we continue to host small, meaningful Shambhala programs? And absolutely. You know, I think an example of that is Chakasambara Fire Puja, but there's a lot of smaller programs that we will still continue to have that are simply, it's a part of our mission. Longer term, there's a kind of a holy trinity of 3 major capital projects. One of them is staff housing. You know, we ask the staff to live in places that are really old and were built by wonderful people many, many years ago.
1971.
Yes. And so we recognize that in order to really take that big step forward, we need to provide our staff with a decent place to live. So there's some exciting ventures there in terms of developing communities of affinity with nonprofits, with architecture schools, land planning schools, various things. So there's a whole exciting project there. Another one is the Sakyong lineage residence. The Sakyong needs a home at SMC. And in fact, that whole lineage of Sakyongs going into the future needs a proper seat at SMC. It's kind of the dot before the stroke, you could say. And then redevelopment of the downtown area. So a new dining and kitchen area that will make the county very happy, provide us with some more office space. Those 3 projects are the large capital projects that are really going to take SMC up to another level. The thing we need to do in order to do that is the completion of the collection system for the wastewater treatment plant. So the wastewater treatment plant is working. There's little critters eating nasty stuff in there and making it clean. And we need to get the proper hookup downtown and then out to Red Feather. And once we've done that, then we can build things and use them. Up to that point, we could build stuff, but the county wouldn't let us use it. We couldn't actually use the buildings that we built. So we have a completion date of November of 2018, and we need to complete the collection system. It's about $600,000 worth of expense for the project, probably around $200,000 worth of lost revenues during blasting and such. And when we finish that, then we can start in very prudent development of those other projects. We really want to be careful in terms of how we do the financial planning for that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I was just going to ask, you know, I understand that there's the P&L are showing operationally that we're close to a break even now, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe just I'm just curious how donations then relate to that, if that's something you want to touch on.
Sure.
Because that's rather, that's not all nonprofits can say this, right? So it's actually something to, I think we can be proud of, and then to acknowledge then these longer term opportunities and challenges, in fact. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Most nonprofits depend on donation revenue in order to cover their operating expenses. SMC is pretty much break even. You know, if you look at our P&L for last year, I think it was just about exactly at break even. This year, I think we're going to be around the same or maybe a little bit better. Our goal for next year is to actually clearly cover all of our operating expenses through our operating revenues, and to be able to cover a chunk of our debt service as well. We project our debt service payments to be around somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000, probably around $380,000 or so. I'd like to be able to cover at least about a quarter to a half of that amount through our operating revenues. And our projections that we're working on right now show that to be within the realm of the feasible. So then the following year, we could apply all of our fundraising towards the capital campaign around completing the collection system for the wastewater treatment plant.
Wonderful. I think we may be at time for me, so thank you so much. And yeah, you painted a picture with it's inspiring for me, and I think for the whole community, it feels so important for this jewel of SMC to be well placed and cared for in the way that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Really appreciate it. And you know, this isn't a fundraising moment per se, but our projections for this year, they include some significant challenges. And we are dependent still on fundraising for making it through the year into this new relationship with the new bank. So we're not quite out of the woods yet, but we're certainly getting very close to it. So I think at this point we're open to questions. And so Kaylee's going to bring me a bunch of questions, and I will simply start reading these. And gentlemen, if you feel that you want to build on the questions or answer part of them yourself as well, please feel free. How can you significantly improve the continuity of staffing at SMC? Well, I think longer term, the housing is going to be critical. It's really hard for people to live there for many years in situations where the housing is kind of subpar. No toilet or outdoor toilet, that kind of thing. It's just very difficult. I think having a clearer sense of the staff path in terms of two elements. One is the significance of the path of leadership in Shambhala. My understanding is that the Sakyong has talked about Shambhala, one way of talking about Shambhala is a path of leadership. So how can the staff at SMC understand and experience themselves as Shambhala leaders and exploring that quality of the path? Concomitantly, how can they develop along a stream of professional training where they're actually developing skills that when they leave SMC, they have professional skills to offer the world. They've had those professional skills honed in an environment that gives them a very unique capacity to be of benefit in the world. All of the training around warriorship, so that they come out with not only the good work qualities, but also the sense of all that Shambhala brings to it, all that Shambhala illuminates in a person. So I think that's my starting point for an answer. Gentlemen, do you have anything you'd add to that?
You know, I think you're touching on it. One of the things that is happening now that will make people want to stay on is that Shambhala Mountain Center is going to increasingly be a vector for social change. It's going to be a place where you can bring together the Shambhala teachings and have an opportunity to engage the larger world through conferences or various kinds of, our online stuff in ways that really are unique. You know, there would be a very creative place to take your inspiration and deepen it through your spiritual practice, get training in leadership, and have situations to apply that training and inspiration that are vibrant and have big implications in the world. And I think SMC is opening up to that. I think the other thing is a real sense of continuity in terms of training and mentorship, which is something we can go further with, where the older students are really mentoring younger students, either in real-world skills, what we call real world, actually Shambhala is the real world, and in terms of their meditation practice and their understanding of the vision of Shambhala. So I think all of those things, a good place to live, really inspiring work that means something in the world, and an opportunity to increase your skills and depth of understanding. The more that's already happening now, but the more we deepen those things, the easier staff retention will be. People just won't want to leave.
Mm-hmm. I think, if you drill down into one area, for example, the staff path, it fluctuates seasonally. People become busier in the summer. You get influxes of new students. Sometimes they're more inspired, and you have a big bunch of new people coming to the shrine room. What it isn't yet is completely stable.
That's correct.
And so we're working with that in a number of different ways. So one way is that in keeping with what the Sakyong talks about of SMC, or perhaps just land center years being like, dog years to human years, that in recognition of that, we're working with Acharya Hesse and other teachers to develop a path that's unique to land centers, and in our case to SMC, where we take a new person from fresh on the land, wide eyes, through guide, through MI, through teacher, and then fleshing that out with Kasung path and societal health and well-being and other elements, and enriching it with elements such as the household text and such, so that their time at SMC becomes this really focused, rich exploration. We're building it now. We don't have a lot of these pieces in place, but we've got the team in place, and we're talking about it and we're working on how to do this. So for me, that's a huge part.
It's my light just went out. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure why. Oh, lights everywhere here went out. So I'm in the dark, but I'm going to speak anyway. There's a real model for that, which is Tail the Tiger and Carmen Chilling in the 70s and early 80s, and quite frankly, even through to today, that so many of us went there for 2 or 3 years, and we got really great training in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. And I think Shambhala Mountain Center can provide a different kind of training that's equally inspiring. So I'm going to go put my lights on again, and I'll be right back.
Okay. Okay. So the next question, how did the last online seminar go, and does it help with the financial issues? The last online seminar, it went really well. I think I mentioned earlier there was probably something in range, I think it was $100,000 gross revenue that came in. We had projected 150,000, so it didn't bring in as much money as we had hoped it would, as we had projected. But we know some of the reasons why that happened. One is that the market's getting more full of those kind of programs, and there was a very significant one that was launched just before our program. So I was just told by Kaylee, who's the brains behind the whole thing, that we pulled in 115,000. So as opposed to 150, which is what we projected. So it's huge, that over 13 months we've had 3 programs, and we've reached over 70,000 people in over 137 countries at this point. It's what has allowed us to survive. It's what's brought us up to, oh, I think we can do this, we can survive. So it certainly hasn't made us flush with money. That's not our reality yet. We still need to be very, very careful with how we spend money, and we need to bring in money before we can make it through this year. With this kind of thing, these online programs, they can reach a tipping point, and we've grown our market share. That is our intention, to continue to develop and to experiment and stay at the cutting edge of this kind of thing. But it's going to take some work and some contemplation of how we can do that, how we can build continuity between programs, for example, or how we can continue to allow the power of the land to inform our online activities. So these are some very, very interesting, rich contemplations that we now have some time, since we've pretty much finished this last one. And yes, it definitely did help. It allowed us to survive.
That would count as helping.
Yes, big time. So the next question, what are SMC's plans for scholarships and supporting long-term practitioners who may not have funds? It's a difficult situation. It's a difficult question. SMC, basically anyone who comes to a Shambhala program, I think there's, aside from friends and family, there's 2 main sources for scholarships. One is the Offering Bowl that Jutta Stavitz runs, and she does it just out of the goodness of her heart. She doesn't receive any pay for it, and it's been a huge support for many practitioners. So that's one source of money where the community can go on and support individuals. And the other is the land centers. We provide the scholarship money for the various people coming to programs. And so it's a very difficult balance of how much of the money that these land centers, that the land centers need in order to survive, can we actually take out and say this is scholarship. So we have a certain ratio, and we have amounts that we can give. People are always invited to request scholarship support. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. People are always invited to request scholarship support. We strongly encourage people first to go to the offering bowl and to come with us. We occasionally go over the kind of ratios that have been established to help in certain situations. We invite people to take on certain roles, to come and volunteer. Longer term, this isn't sustainable. This isn't the way it's going to be able to work. That there are two things that need to happen. One is that the community as a whole needs to recognize the importance of senior practitioners, some of whom don't have the wherewithal to make it to programs, and that this is actually a community benefit that arises when community takes responsibility and supports these practitioners. So that's one aspect that I think is really, really important, that it's not simply centralized on the land centers as being the only entity that can pay for the scholarship money. I think the other one is that as SMC, for example, becomes more financially stable, and as we actually develop into a thriving situation where we have some kind of surplus, some amount of that surplus will be allocated towards scholarships. And we'll be able to open up fundraising drives that are specifically targeted as restricted funds towards scholarship plans. So those are things that we have a commitment to doing in the future. And right now we're still in, let's get through. We need to get through this year. I keep needing to come up with money to meet the next payroll because it's very, very tight. So it's hard to think too grandly about when I can actually commit to having scholarship money that comes out of targeted fundraising and stuff. But I know that, I don't know it, but I feel strongly that within 2 years, SMC should be in a stable enough situation where we can actually start to target that kind of thing. Gentlemen, do you have any thoughts on this?
You know, I think how we support each other, the generosity, and I think Robert has a lot to say about this too, but this quality of generosity is at the heart of everything we're doing. Really, the reason we can be having this conversation is because of the level of generosity of people for the last 25, 30 years. And it's really amazing what people are given. And I believe as we open up to the larger world, we are going to start to thrive. And we should open our hearts to our friends who don't have the resources to go to SMC, and we should support them. I think that's absolutely right. Getting our institutions healthy is really, really worthwhile, because when the institution itself barely works, which is just the process of growth, in other words, it's like a teenager that's, you know, we're actually on the edge of working. But when the institution is barely making it through every year, we're not able to do some of the things we really need to do, and I think we're all inspired to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Robert, do you have something to say about that?
I think it points to the ways in which there's not a separation between institution and community. Actually, it's not like there's SMC that exists as something that's isolated, that's separate from the as you said, generosity of the community, but also the priorities of the community, and where we're dedicating our financial energy and our lunta and those things. So I think that what you see then is that actually there's this exchange. It's a dialogue, and it's a dialogue of whether that's physically visiting, you know, SMC in the stupa, or whether it's it's giving to SMC, or it's supporting the people in your own local community so that they can attend these programs as part of their life path as we transition. I think that it cracks open the sense of, oh, we actually are all together and carrying all of the community through this. So, and it's a distinct challenge, and we're working through the first generation of this. So that spirit of experimentation and of learning and the openness to that we're in a learning phase here as well. And creating a culture around that is going to be essential.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. So bottom line, anyone who's coming to a program at SMC, of course, if you need it, ask for a scholarship. And we'll do what we can as an institution. And there are some situations where we go beyond the norm. So please do always engage in the conversation. We will do what we can to bring practitioners to programs at SMC. I think I'll move on to another question now. What does SMC need now? How can we help? There's so many ways. You know, one of the, this isn't in any particular order. One thing that has been really significant for me as the director, and I think for staff at SMC as a whole, is the change in the storyline about SMC. That the kind of somewhat cynical approach that I've experienced over the years of people saying, oh, that's just SMC crying wolf, or, you know, you're a bottomless hole and you'll, you know, if you put the money there, we don't know what's going to happen. I think those days are gone in the Sangha. People don't talk that way anymore. Because of events such as this, and you know, just the general story that people tell when they leave SMC this year, and last year, that people are saying good things about it. But one of the things you can do is just have a sense of mindfulness about the speech around SMC. And if there's a question that arises, ask the question of SMC. If there's a perspective that's shared, probe the perspective. We've heard a lot of really good things about SMC this year from people that have been coming for decades. So that quality of telling this true story about SMC is a really helpful thing. Always coming to programs, that's always very helpful. If you have interesting ideas, we're always eager to hear them. If there's a way that you can support financially at our end of year campaign this year, that's really, really huge. Those are some of the main ones that come to mind. Dan, you've been involved with this kind of thing for a while. Do you have any other kind of suggestions of how people might support SMC at this point?
Well, I do actually, and one of the interesting things that as older practitioners and people who've been practicing for a while is that we actually invoke magic. And that means, you know, your Kurukula practice or just your aspiration, your Munlam. This is very important because sometimes we feel sort of beaten down as pioneers for the last 40 or 50 years. It's been a hard slog in a lot of ways. And so a lot of people can't write a check. They can't even pay for a program. But the power of our aspiration is extremely powerful. Yeah. I mean, it makes a big, big difference that you think, you know, I really hope for Shambhala to flourish in this world. And I'd really like to see Shambhala Mountain Center be part of that flourishing. And then accidents happen. And so that might seem mystical, but that sort of goes along with this Shambhala tradition, is that we do a little lasang, or we dedicate our Kurukula practice, or we just have a heart wish that things flourish. That's certainly how I feel about Shambhala Mountain Center, and that's what I'm finding from the staff there. And we'd like to invite you to be part of that lasang, that big, big heart lasang that we're stoking right now. So that's what came to mind.
Yeah, I think two things I'd add to that. One is staffing, and there's a lot of different ways to staff and support the staff. That can be from an MI or a teaching perspective. It can also be if someone's at a point in their life where they have some experience and they want to come and work at SMC or volunteer at SMC for some time, there's a lot of different ways that we're needing to add staffing resources to SMC. And so there's some interesting conversations that can be had even with people who can't necessarily be on the land, live on the land. So that's one. Another one that I'd say is tuning into the drama of the land. If you're coming for a big program, come a day early or stay a day afterwards and go for a hike. There's just magic in the southern pastures, rock formations and friends to meet, so to speak, that has certainly blown my mind. And if anybody has any interest in that, please feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to point out some hikes and such and ways that you can meet some very interesting, energetic elements of the land. It has changed my life going out for hikes at SMC.
Another thing that we're doing is that we're starting to make relationships with people who don't live at SMC or even near SMC, who have significant contacts in the world, expertise, professional experience, perspectives, and we're creating a community out of those people. And so if you're one of those folks who's done something interesting that might be of benefit to SMC, we're really enjoying bringing those folks together, whether you're a banker or a performer or whatever it might be. So SMC's vision is really quite big in the longer term, and we need people who have seen things we haven't seen, who want to collaborate. So that's another way you can be of help.
Gentlemen, I think we're coming towards the end, and gentlemen and ladies watching. There was a question here, and I'm not quite clear on what the question, where you wanted to go with it, but it's, do we have a relationship with an accounting firm that is doing the financial statements? What I assume is our auditors. We have a company, that E. Bailey, that does our auditing. We produce a 990. We did it in-house last year. This year we had an accountant from the Sangha do it. That's a public domain document that is posted at the, I think, Secretary of State of Colorado. So all of the normal financial documents that are produced by the appropriate parties that are produced for a nonprofit organization such as SMC. So if there's an element of that question that I've missed, please just email us and we'll get that. We'll get a response to you. Dan and Robert, thank you so much for joining us. If there's any final comments that you gentlemen have, I would just like to say thank you so much. It's a joy to work with you. I think that's one of the marks of having the blessing of working in Shambhala, is that you work with these amazing people. And you two, I just appreciate you so much. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
And back at you.
Okay. Well, I
Should
think
we dedicate the merit?
Dedicate the merits and then go our merry ways.
By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the virgin's wisdom bloom, may the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled, may all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Bye-bye.